You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN and Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, the long-lost Christos, and with me today is Mark. How are you doing, Mark?
He's back. We got him back. We found him.
I got caught up in a temporal causality loop, so I've been missing in action.
Well, and I noticed you're human again. I thought,
Yeah.
your Vulcan ears are gone.
Well, I ran into Dr. Fraser Crane on his old ship, and he got me out of it. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's been crazy summer for me so far. I've got promoted at work, which is great, but it also means a little bit more travel for work, and also add in personal travel. I've already taken a few personal trips. So yes, that makes it much harder to podcast. So thank you to Mark and Amy and Kelvin for picking up the slack, but it should be around for the next foreseeable few weeks, at least up to STLV times when we'll see most of us will be together.
Yeah, we'll all be gone for that week. So
yeah,
apologies, listeners.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to it. It should be interesting to see how that goes with the actor strike started now. I have a feeling the panels are going to suck, but mostly for me going to STLV is being with friends and all that good stuff. So it's going to be fun no matter what.
This is the bridge. All hands to emergency escape pods.
Escape pod. Hey.
Hey.
This is a segment. If listeners remember, this is a segment where we escape from the normal conversation to discuss what's happening in Trek, the latest episode that dropped. And this week, Escape Pod is focusing on Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 5, Charades.
Well, I have a lot to say about charades.
Oh.
Well, and it's funny. I'm a little, okay, I'm disappointed because I felt like Strange New Worlds hit it strong out the gate this season with, the first 3 episodes arguably being some of the best Strange New Worlds we've seen. And then for me, it's been tapering off. And honestly, it's hit what I'm going to call my least favorite episode of Strange New Worlds this week. Mostly because I feel like it was Spock amok. Again, I mean, we're going to put Spock into Pring in a situation, and then we're going to completely handicap Spock in a way that make it awkward for comedic effect. It's literally Spock amok on steroids.
Which is funny because this is Season 2, Episode 5, and if you remember, listeners, Season 1, Episode 5 was Spock amok.
Spock amok. Like, okay, in Spock amok, they do a mind meld, Katra swap, whatever. And we have that, Freaky Friday effect in Spock amok. And in this one, a accident leads to Spock losing his Vulcan DNA. And he's completely humid. So he's basically a fish out of water. And somehow he's not just human, but he's a human teenager. Yeah.
Well,
and
Season 3, they have planned Season 3, Episode 5. Spock is going to be full Vulcan this time and all in on logic and playing Calto. So, we have that to look forward to.
So he's basically going to be Tuvok.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm kidding, listeners.
I know. They know. Like I said, maybe if we hadn't had Spock amok, this would be fine. But I feel like you've gone back to the well to play the same joke in a series that is only 15 episodes long so far. It's not like you did this in Season 1 and Season 5. You did it 10 episodes later.
Yeah, so Spock amok wasn't my favorite of Season 1, but it's funny. It's a cool one-off.
Agreed.
I like it. this episode, I feel like the same way. Like, it's not my favorite, but I don't have any problems with it. Like, I'll rewatch it. I've already rewatched it a couple times. I will say though that yeah, I I can see your point, Christos, to it being like a rehash, but I also feel like it kind of something needed to happen to sort of pull them apart and put them on a break so we could explore more of the Spock Chapel relationship, which I'm
Right.
really there for.
And honestly, in like Amok Time, that's the right episode, right? That's not for another 10 years, 9 years, where we hit original series. So it's going to be a pretty long break, unless they're going to do the on again, off again, Ross and Rachel shit. But some other things about this episode that are weird to me, like he's running, there's like complete lack of discipline on the Enterprise. I mean, people just like, oh, I'm going to take a shuttle and go fly into go do a whole thing with a interdimensional species. And yeah, there's no big deal about that. And I just it doesn't feel very Star Trek-y to me. It just feels like we're going for comedy. And how do we do that?
Well, yes. But I also would lean on the fact that it's 10 years before TOS, and TOS is arguably more silly and loose with the regulations and rules than they would be with TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. So
Yeah.
I think there's still a little bit of cowboy diplomacy back then. And also, she did bring along La'an, who's chief of security. So if they're going to get anybody to help steal the shuttle, they might as well get the chief of security.
Yeah. More comments on this when we get to our main topic. My last major gripe is more of a technicality, but Spock is supposed to be a vegetarian. So Spock is, dealing with his new human side and he can smell the bacon. I mean, don't you think Pike, as his friend, it would say, hey, at least throw something out there like, hey, you're vegetarian, Spock. Unless this is supposed to be replicated bacon or something or synthesized or whatever. But I feel like, and I've said this before, when it comes to food, I feel like Strange New Worlds continues to show this like big old man meat eating world of Pike, and it takes away from this evolved future that we're supposed to have.
Christos,
yeah,
I am not a vegetarian and I am not a vegan. Obviously, but that pulled me out of the episode and completely, because out of every single character on that show, the least likely person to ever put bacon in his mouth, even as a human, would be Spock. I could see some of the other characters, even Nurse Chapel being like, all right, where's my BLT, whatever.
Yeah.
But like not Spock. They should not have done that, and that's a writer's thing. They shouldn't have done that.
It is a writer's thing, and it's like it's just playing off of a 20th century, 21st century trope of bacon, bacon, bacon. Everyone loves bacon. Bacon makes everything good. And really, we're still doing that 200 years from now, 300 years from now. That's the future they want to show us, is that we're still celebrating slaughtering pigs and eating them.
Yeah. I didn't eat bacon for probably 10 or 15 years, just because really I just didn't think it was like a good choice or very healthy, and so I didn't for a long time, and I would avoid stuff that had bacon in it. But in the last couple of years, I've had it. People have made things for me and it had bacon in it. I'm not like, oh, I'm not going to eat this, but really, like, yeah, I just feel like at that point we'd be more evolved, and Pike wouldn't be even cooking it. Like, I don't know. I think it is probably like tofurkey kind of bacon. Like, I don't believe that it's actually it's synthetic bacon. There's no way there's a pig on board the Enterprise that they killed. So that would be a down for me as well. But I do want to end on a positive. If we're gonna, if we're concluding this discussion, I do want to say that I have not been actually disappointed by a single episode of this show. I don't think yet. I'm still not. I enjoyed this episode. Was it my favorite? No. But it was like the ending, I think, pleased me to see Chapel finally with Spock, although T'Pring is great. She was very valid, I feel like, in her desire to take a break because Spock really should have trusted her with, even in his altered state, with the
Yeah.
information. But yeah, I'm glad that they're going to explore a little bit of Chapel Spock. We'll see where that
Yeah.
goes. That'll be a fun exploration. And this season just, I don't know, for me, been continuing to knock it out of the park. I've enjoyed every episode. I haven't had one where I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. I thought T'Pring a little overreacted. It was Spock's intention to tell her right up until the moment that he didn't, and, he portraying him as this out of control teenager with, emotions and hormones and things like that going on. T'Pring should have been more understanding that he was not in his right mind, and she's judging him for not being in his right mind. And I thought that was it kind of took me out of it too. I know you're trying to end it on a positive note, but I'm actually sticking up for Spock in this case. I thought T'Pring was too hard on him, but I get it. We had to split them apart. That was the whole point, right?
But Christos, but did you enjoy this episode more than the average TOS episode?
I have TOS episodes that I like more than this episode, but the average, yes, I'll say that. Look at you. Well,
I'm trying to pull some positivity.
No, here you go. I'm going to pull us into a topic. I'm going to segue into our new topic where we're going to talk about my favorite Strange New Worlds episode. So guess what, listeners? We're starting a new series. Shocking. And the only actually reason we're starting this new series is because Mark and I were chatting about a week ago, and I'm like, I want to talk about this episode, so we need to build a series around it. And so that being said, our episode today is Ad Astra per Aspera. And it's going to be part 1 of our all new Courtroom series. Yay! And Star Trek has this long tradition of morality. Star Trek has this long tradition of morality plays. I can't even say that word this morning. That take place in the courtroom, and there's such great ones out there, like Measure of a Man and The Drumhead, The Menagerie, and we just added a new one to that. Like I said, Ad Astra per Aspera. So we're going to break that one down today. You up for that, Mark?
I couldn't be more excited to discuss Strange New Worlds. I get giddy whenever we get a Strange New Worlds episode.
So listeners, for the record, I probably watched this episode at least 6 or 7 times. I cry multiple times in this episode while it's on. It's just it's Star Trek. It hits all the feels for me. Everything from the writing to the acting to some of the production, the shots, the sets, the uniforms. This is a perfect Star Trek episode for me. So it'll be really easy. It'll be really hard for me to come up with some things I don't like about this episode, but I'm sure I'll find something because it wouldn't be me otherwise.
The irony is that in this case, and I think I talked about this before in the past, but the Courtroom episodes of Trek, as important as they are, and as much as I have a lot to gain from rewatching them, tend to be some of my least favorite, including this one. So this is definitely not my favorite Strange New Worlds episode by a long shot. And I've had to watch it actually so many times because I watched it a couple of times when it came out. Then I had to watch it again for Union Federation because I was on board for that. And then again for this. So I've seen it so many times as it being not my favorite world, but I still enjoy it. I mean, it's good.
Yeah, I get it. I think one of the reasons I like it so much, and this is what makes everybody different. And that's what's the great thing about life in general is diversity. One person's cup of tea for Star Trek is not the other. So one of the reasons I think this episode appeals to me so much is that I love politics so much. And there's a new podcast out there that I just want to give a quick shout out to called Trek Politics with Mary L. Trump. And yes, that is Donald Trump's niece, who's very liberal and a lesbian and a huge Trekkie. So she has a co-host and they talk Trek politics. They're kind of talking a little bit about, they're a little all over the place, which is great. They're kind of doing a little bit of recap of current episodes. They've already had like Terry Matalas and Todd Stashwick and Tim Russ on as guests. So they're just about three or four episodes in, and they've already got some big guests. I think Jerry Ryan's been on the show already. Yeah, she has. So like, yeah, they're not messing around with the level of people that they're getting. Yeah, I love it. So, and you're taking politics and Star Trek and bringing it together. So I'm very happy about that. But this episode, I think, is why it appeals to me, because this episode's political. So kind of getting into where we are with this episode, we knew this episode was coming because at the end of season 1, episode 10, Lieutenant Commander Una Chin Riley was arrested by Captain Battelle, which we'll get into that later, and charged as being an Illyrian and having lied in her Starfleet application.
Chris, I want to ask you a quick question about that. What are your feelings about the fact that this is now episode 2 where they're talking about this instead of starting off season 2 with this episode? Yeah. How do you feel about it? Because they could have very well turned it into a 2-parter, but they did not. So I just want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons I think they did this, and there's lots I think that are fact, and some of them are supposition. Like for one, Anson Mount had just had a baby, and that's why he's not in episode 1 very much. And he basically has one scene, which I'm sure was a pickup later, and he could not be really in episode 1. So as we know, he is a decent part of this episode. That's one like off the screen version. Second one is, when you're coming back and you're kicking off a brand new season, it is a courtroom episode that's very drama driven, dialogue driven. The best way to kick off a new season. And by the way, folks, Strange New Worlds did debut at number 7 in the streaming ratings for its first episode. It's actually a little higher than were any of the Picard episodes. So now we have 2 Star Trek shows that are making the Nielsen top 10 streaming shows. So that's really great for Star Trek. And I think that part of that is, I think they picked up some new viewers during Picard through promos and commercials and people having Paramount Plus. And anyways, so yeah, I think there's a reason they wanted to start the season off with a good action episode, and they did that with episode 1. And then it was like, hey, now we need to resolve the Una Chin Riley story. I'm glad they got it done in episode 2 so that we got Una back. I like that, that it's just done, right? And I also like that it didn't play on all season.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that either. And I'm happy that they didn't do it launch with making this episode 1, because that would have really turned it into a 2-parter. And I like the fact that they really don't have those in Strange New Worlds. They have like a sort of a background plot that continues to exist through all of it, but for the most part, every single episode of Strange New Worlds, you can just at random grab and watch when you want, and you don't need to watch what came before. And so it keeps it with that trend.
Yeah, episode 1 has that quick scene between Una and Pike, which is the only scene that they both appear in, or literally are both in the first episode, where I think it alludes to Pike going off to find Nira, who we'll talk about soon. And other than that, it's its own little bottle story. And then we get to this episode. So this is a trial episode. It was totally expected. We knew we had to get there. So the episode itself, the trial, becomes this huge allegory for disenfranchised groups of citizens of our current world. And especially, I think, the LGBTQ community with a real, I just want to get really focused probably on the trans community. And I think the overall aspect of immigrants and refugees, because they're both these marginalized groups, and I think the episode kind of represents the struggles of these groups. Maybe even also, I'd be remiss if I left out Jewish people and the struggles that Jews have had through the years. So, yeah, I think I think people in general, one of the reasons this episode kind of hits strong is a lot of people can find something in the persecution of the Illyrians. What do you think about the way, Mark, the representation was of all these people in this episode? And did any of that hit with you, or did you get anything else out of that?
Oh, I thought like you did that it was super broad. Of course, being a member of the LGBTQ community, I saw us there in a lot of ways. However, I could see with the broad brush they were painting where, if you are disenfranchised in any way or feel like you are, there are parts of this episode that you could relate to. And I love that because it allowed more people to connect with it. It was more inclusive than exclusive as far as the conversation. And I love the care they went into crafting that dialogue and made it so meaningful. And of course, it was acted out of the park. The person that they got to play she's the lawyer. I mean, wow. Yeah. Where did she come from? Can they bring her back?
Yeah. Well, let's just jump right into that. I think you're talking about the character Nira, and I'm going to try not to butcher her name. It's Yatai Bataki. I think I said that right, hopefully. She is an Illyrian, we established. She's also a former friend of Una Chin Riley. And she basically proves to us that she could carry her very own Starfleet Jag show. I mean, she is just perfect in this episode, in my opinion. The acting, her diction, her right down to her clothes. She's great in this episode, and she plays, like I said, Una's lawyer. We have her in there thanks to Pike. He goes and visits her and persuades her to come represent Una, not just for Una, but to represent Illyrians and to get representation for their cause and give it more of a platform. It's kind of established that she had been trying but failing miserably at getting Una's or getting Illyrian's story told. But this gives her a platform to do so. It's kind of funny. That's how Pike sold it to her. And then when she goes and does that, Una gets mad at her later. So it's kind of, I felt there's a little bit of a, it was a little hypocritical to say, hey, you're out just for your cause. And it's exactly how Pike sold taking the case to her.
The only thing that I was a little bit concerned about here, and I mentioned also on Union Federation, is that they make it out to be that she was like this long lost friend of Una's, but I didn't necessarily buy it. It's like, if I haven't seen somebody that I have, since I was 10 years old, let's say, I don't know if I would really know anything about them or still consider them a friend, even if we were like really good friends from like 5 until 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're both probably in their 30s at the very least at this point. Like, how would they even know that she was the lawyer? Like, if they haven't been in any contact whatsoever? Like, I don't know, that whole aspect didn't make any sense to me.
Well, first off, I think both characters are supposed to be at least in their 40s. Yeah, I know. Well, and I'm just using facts. I mean, you're talking about her serving under Admiral April.
Mm-hmm.
And just historically speaking, there's just time is there. I think obviously Nira knew all about Una. She's following her career. She's following her plight. She's following, the lie, so to speak, and was kind of like predicted this. So we know Nira knows everything about Una, and we all know Nira is very connected because she's privy to top secret things that are happening behind the scenes, and it's also kind of established that there are other Illyrians serving in Starfleet. They're just not out. That Una could be connected back to home still. It's like nothing's, she had this, Nira's a prominent lawyer. It's not like she's in hiding. She would be in databases and whatnot. So, I think it's a classic story of a friendship that went awry, that didn't have discussions that needed to happen. And we get some of that later in this episode. So I don't quite lose that part there. But I can see where you think that way. So the trial starts to play out. We get, first and foremost, like kind of right away, we get Admiral April on the stand, who could be a very positive witness for Commander Riley, Una Chin Riley, but it doesn't quite go that way because Nira's a little bit plays a little hardcore. And the reason I bring this up is because we're talking about discipline and the rules, and I feel like Nira does this great job of pointing out the obvious about Star Trek, is that rules get broken all the time. The Prime Directive gets broken all the time, and many a times there's no consequences for it. So I thought that was a really good way for Star Trek to call out itself.
No, I 100% agree. Yeah. It didn't make any sense. And as far as Robert April, I love the actor they got to play him. He's been fabulous. And I think for the most part, we've only seen him in a positive light. But this was the first time we were like, oh, okay. Like, especially, towards the end when he says he wouldn't recommend her to Starfleet now. It just sort of created this, I guess, this negative plot line that's we'll see where it goes going forward, because now he'll have like this strained relationship with Una.
Yeah, we'll see. That's a good point. We don't really, that part didn't feel completely, resolved for me. The second other, I think, prominent character in this is Captain Battelle. Captain Battelle, up until this episode, we only really knew her as, Pike's love interest, on again, off again, or maybe even just friends with benefits. We didn't really quite know what was happening with them. And then at the end of season 1, she just kind of shows up out of nowhere to arrest Una. And we're like, well, you're a captain of a starship. What the hell are you doing? Suddenly you're working for Starfleet security or something. I never really understood that, other than let's just take somebody that we know and give them more to do to keep that character in it.
Do you think it was like the Ensign Rowe thing, or the Captain Rowe, or whatever she is now, thing in Picard, where she just showed up and she was the arresting officer?
Yeah, well, Rowe's a commander, and we get it. She works for whatever she works for. But as far as we know, Captain Battelle's just like Captain Pike. She's got a ship, and she's out running missions. So, yeah, I mean, it's like that's where I'm coming from. It'd be like Pike showing up on her ship and arresting somebody. Like, what's that about?
Well, I mean, maybe because she's like the closest ship nearby, so they contact her. Hey, you're the only one that can go and do this arrest. Can you go do it?
Well, but we go beyond the arrest now. In this episode, she's also the prosecuting representation of Starfleet. And basically, this is on her. And like I said, I think this is almost like when in Measure of a Man, when they have Riker do the prosecution against Data. It's like, it just adds better drama to have somebody and like, maybe, or don't like, being in, other than bringing in another new character to play that role. But I just thought it was a little gratuitous to do this. But what I will say,
at least they didn't pull off Una's arms.
Yes, that's hard to watch. I that makes me so uncomfortable when I watch that part of it was meant to do that though.
The toy is broken or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever he said.
Oh shit. Kidding me.
Now we're getting the feels.
Yeah, I know, and that'll be a future episode anyway. So we'll sidebar that. little legal terms there. But Battelle, we quickly learn about maybe 30% into the episode that she's doing her best not to look out for Una and Pike, because what we're forgetting, what also kind of comes up in this episode, is that Pike's in trouble too, potentially, because he knew for about 3 or 4 months that Una was an Illyrian and didn't arrest her or report it or anything like that. So they're trying to keep Pike's nose clean, and potentially the rest of the command crew of the USS Enterprise for maybe potentially knowing this. We do know that La'an knew, for example, and others. So, yeah, we watching Battelle kind of navigate this, but it does become kind of abundantly clear, especially when Neera kind of comes in and does the whole asylum angle, that Battelle is rooting for Una because she lights up like a Christmas tree as she's being asked to read the Starfleet Code of Conduct. So I was all about that. Let's talk about the baddie of the episode, Admiral Pasak or Pasik. Am I saying that right? What do you think?
You're asking me.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to call him Admiral What a Dick because
that works.
Yeah, because I don't know.
Wait, before we launch into that, Admiral What a Dick.
Yeah.
This is actually a nitpick, which I'll throw in this regeneration early. That they've been doing this with Vulcans as of late. They did it, and actually the most recent Strange New Worlds episode with T'Pring's mother, where they just and that guy that was head of the Vulcan Science Academy that was talking to Chapel, they made them dicks. But there was emotion behind it, though. It seemed like there was like an annoyance factor and all this, and it's the same with this guy.
Well, it's been a major trope since Enterprise. I mean, if you think about it, in Enterprise, Vulcans were dicks the whole way through, pretty much. And it wasn't toward the very end that some Vulcans start to really respect Starfleet or humans. There's that, and you're right. It's front and center in Strange New Worlds again.
Why? They're supposed to have no emotion, yet it's coming across clearly they are having an emotion.
They have a prejudice toward humans, right? Mm-hmm. Other than the fact that we know they haven't. I know humans smell bad to them, and it's blah blah blah, and I get that, and there's nothing, but there. I mean, I can throw a little bit of my own Christos' theory to this. If you guys remember, a few weeks ago, we talked about predictions for season 2. And I talked to you guys about the comic books that I read that take place between season 1 and 2. And we find out that Vulcans introduced genetic engineering to the Illyrians. And by the end of the episode, it's kind of agreed not to talk about it because it's going to reflect Vulcans in a bad light. In my mind, the reason Admiral Pasak gets involved in this is because he's trying to protect that secret, because the Vulcans are going to look really bad. And, you could argue that, the whole idea of excluding Illyrians might be wrong and the Vulcans had something to do with it. Like I said, it just makes Vulcans look really bad. And I think he's just out there running PR to try to keep this under wraps. And that's why he's like going after Pike, and because he's not Pasak is not out for Una. He's out to get Pike, and I don't know what that that's. And it's also because Pike's crew figured out the whole Illyrian thing, so let's just go punish them. I don't know. That's my 2 cents. Ultimately, after all the runs arounds in this episode, Neera doesn't really get anything changed for Illyrians. Of course, we all know we get a special case for Una based on the fact that they tied everything that happened in the sequence of events to what one does when they want to request asylum within the Federation, within Starfleet. And they basically convince the judges to look at it that way in a positive manner than look at what she did wrong. Like, no, she came for asylum, and please grant the asylum. And then we all know she gets granted asylum. So Una is a one-off allowed into Starfleet. And maybe that can kind of create a precedent for other Illyrians to go through the motions of asking for asylum. But other than that, the whole status of genetic engineering within Starfleet, within the Federation, remains the same. The law stays the same. But, Una survives to serve again on the Enterprise, and that's kind of how it ends.
This was very much reminiscent for me of being a kid. I mean, it wasn't even a teenager when it might have been like 10 or something. When did Best of Both Worlds? When did that happen? That was like what, early 90s.
I think 89, 90, or like in 1990. No,
so I might have been
1990.
I might have been 10. I was like 10 years old maybe. Or actually, it was 1990. I would have been 8. So I was reminded of Best of Both Worlds because when part 1 came out, you didn't know what happened to Picard. You didn't know if he was going to ever come back to the show. It looked like he was done. They already had a replacement captain on the Enterprise. And we know from just history, we know from the last episode of Strange New Worlds when Pike was in the future and Una was just gone. And they're like, well, don't you remember? Like, she was arrested and, she was put away for, in prison. And nobody can talk to her. And she sort of disappears by the time of Kirk's Enterprise and TOS. So it could very well have been set up that she could just be gone. And so when I went into this season 2, I was like, well, I hope we get her back. But there was that whole unknowing aspect. So This was for me, one of the few times where Strange New Worlds has had any real stakes. And I say that because, most of the characters, survive. Even Kirk's brother survives to TOS. So, and Uhura survives. Like, all of these people survive. I think La'an's the only one that could potentially not, but she will. So it's like, this was just one of the few examples where they could have actually gotten rid of a character. So I was a little bit concerned. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Christos?
Yeah. I guess for me, I had no question that they weren't going to resolve her situation somehow and back on the show. And mostly because maybe behind the scenes, we've heard nothing about, well, she's only guest starring for one episode this season or anything like that. We knew there was a Courtroom episode a long time back, and I mean, it was one of the earliest clips they dropped for the season. Yeah, I think I know, for me personally, I just heard nothing about, the actress leaving the show. So I just expected that this was going to resolve itself somehow. And I didn't have that. Well, and you're right. Everything you said is right. We have no future looking ahead for the character of Una. And she's nowhere to be found in TOS. And in the Cage, the events of the Cage took place well before where we're at now. So everything you said is correct. But I just fully expected Rebecca Ramon to be,
What do you think would have happened with Best of Both Worlds if it was filmed today with, the internet being what it is? Would that suspense be gone?
It depends on how much you know. I mean, yes, we had 3 months to stew over what was going to happen to Captain Picard, and there were some behind the scene things that could have made it very easy for him to be gone. Information flows a lot more freely now than it did then, and people talk a lot more, and it gets out there, and Twitter, social media. I doubt the suspense would have been as grave as it was in today's climate. But, in these days too, you don't get 3 months between seasons. You get like a year, so there's that too. So you'd have to kind of keep things under wrap for a whole year. Anyways. Yeah. I don't know how it could go, but you probably something would have leaked along the way. But I don't know. Sometimes Star Trek does keep secrets, Like they shot the whole entire season 3 of Picard completely without anybody knowing that the entire TNG cast was coming back. So, and they were and they got to tell us, not it was leaked or we found out or
including the D.
Yeah, that leaked. Including Patrick Stewart at Comic-Con last year. He said some shit that he shouldn't have, and there was somebody, I think they did. There was some leaks, but then they kind of tampered him down kind of nicely. But anyways, shall we jump into a few little assimilation and regenerations on this episode?
Oh, I'm so happy for the first assimilation on here. The costumes that were based on the original series costumes from Court Martial and the Menagerie are gorgeous. And if I didn't have time this year to get one for STLV, but they better make one, and I am going to get one for next year because they're some of my all-time favorite Star Trek costumes at all. I just love them that much. Yeah.
I thought the best part about all that was like my little brother. I say my little brother. He's 40 years old. He hit me up and he's like, "That's so cool that Star Trek has pride badges." And, he's telling me that. And I sent him a screenshot of Captain Kirk wearing, William Shatner wearing the uniform from a TOS episode. And I'm like, by the way, that's nothing new. They didn't just go do that. This is a slight update to an old uniform that's been on screen. And he thought that was even cooler that they nailed it so directionally correct and only made the minorest of tweaks to bring it forward. But their little colorful badges were pretty much just the same. And
I hope Fansets makes those. I really want them.
Yeah. That I would be shocked if they don't, but yes. And we're going to need that if we're going to do those cosplays. Let's see here. Of course, we've talked a little bit about the acting all the way here. I mean, obviously, Nira is your MVP of this episode, but shout out to Rebecca Ramon when she has to go through the recounting of her life story. She does it so eloquently. It is so well acted. You find yourself identifying with her where you can, but she kind of makes her own case, and that through the acting, and I think that's spectacular.
And the young girl they got to play her as, a teenager, I thought did a really good job too. She, looked like she was hurt and, confused as to why they weren't getting help for her. And I just thought, she had a small little bit part in this Star Trek episode. And I usually don't like kids, but big credit to that actress because in spite of being a child actor in Star Trek, she didn't detract the episode for me, where usually the child actors do. It takes me out of it. I'm like, oh, no, just fast forward. Yeah. But I liked her. She was good.
Yeah, she was very well cast, and I felt did a very good young version of Una, and I totally believable. And I really I'll just go one more assimilation here. The use of the supporting cast or the rest of the cast of Strange New Worlds. Of course, we get to see a couple of them testify, like Spock and La'an and M'Benga, and they get some funny moments in there and some touching moments as well. But having the rest of the cast kind of watch the court proceedings in the conference room and the pacing and the looks on their face, and like Uhura did a couple, like what, I thought that was a really good way to show the rest of the cast, even when they didn't have a lot to do in the episode.
And when is the last time where we had our crew watching something happen on a screen, unable to help, right? When it was the Menagerie episode where they're replaying the events, they're sitting in the courtroom, they're watching it on a screen outside of the thing. It's so TOS.
Yeah. The only thing I kind of got that even came close to that is in TNG, and I'm going to I'll get this wrong. 1011100111, whatever the hell that is. I know there's people who can do that perfectly. I can't. But when they are tricked into evacuating the Enterprise, and the command crew is coming together on the starbase, and they're looking at the Enterprise, and then they're looking at the Enterprise being stolen, and like I'm like, oh, okay, that's that. I don't know why I got a little flashback to that, but that's my own crazy head. So. Let's see here. Regenerations. You have one here, and I'll let you say it because I have thoughts too.
All right. So I actually this regeneration I've mentioned before, and it is the Discovery set that they reused. Did not make any sense. Like, I'm all for using the Discovery sets as much as possible. I actually like it when they do that with Strange New Worlds. I think it's cool. It makes the universe seem bigger. But this particular set, using the it's the Federation headquarters set.
It's Federation HQ, yeah.
Using that set to be the courtroom and having a giant freaking hole to nowhere in the middle of the courtroom made no sense. If you want a courtroom, you shut the doors, close proceedings, like whatever. You need to be able to approach a bench. There's no way in the future they would make this courtroom with a giant donut. It's dumb.
I'm kind of indifferent about it. I get that it more so. I think everything you said makes sense, but I think it was a production choice. Like, hey, we have this set, we need to save money. That was probably the motivation for using that set. I think they did a pretty good job redressing it with some of the wood elements to give it more of that mid-century modern feel and a lot of that TOS feel. Yeah, you're right. The hole in the middle of the set, which is basically because it looks down on all the other levels of Federation HQ. That's why it exists. We saw it in season 4 a lot of Discovery. That's exactly why it's all there. But I don't know. I thought it looked all right. It wasn't a deal breaker for me. I thought it was just more of a, hey, we're saving $5 by not having to go build a courtroom set and redressing a set that we already own. So let's jump into some trivia here. It is a little known fact. When we talk trivia, I'll give you some Cliff Clavin from Cheers. It is a little known fact that this is one of 17 Star Trek episodes with titles derived from Latin. In this case, Ad Astra per Aspera means to the stars through hardship, which I thought was in Una's testimony. She kind of hit that, like what that means so well.
Well, to tack onto that, Ad Astra per Aspera was the motto for the United Earth, the precursor to Starfleet and the Federation. And that actually came from a production designer from Enterprise who first noticed it written above one of the doors while touring a NASA facility. Now, I got the trivia from Twitter, but I could not remember which person that had worked on Enterprise had tweeted it, so I wasn't able to find and source it today. But if you guys out there in the internet are listening, can you remind me who that was? We will credit them specifically next time.
All right. Let's see how well I can do this next one without botching it. Admiral Zeus Tologal, maybe, is introduced as Starfleet's tribunal. Is introduced as the Starfleet Tribunal's Space Command representative, a position first mentioned in the TOS episode Court Martial, while Commodore Shiv is introduced as Starfleet Commander, a position first mentioned in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock.
Yeah, I love that they're reusing some of these old terms in some of the newer shows. It's great. Even like Commodore,
Yeah, it's like not just that, but like, okay, for a show that's kind of getting blasted at times for its disregard to canon, there's a lot of canon in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. The relief in the courtroom, which I liked the relief. It depicts members of various 23rd century Federation members, including the founding members, an Endorian, a human, a Tellarite, and a Vulcan, as well as many other species, which On Memory Alpha, you can find the full list, but there were so many with unpronounceable names that I didn't include them here. You're welcome.
Really fun one. I love this next one. While on the stand, Spock mentions meeting Una Chin Riley for the first time and discovering her love of Gilbert and Sullivan as depicted in Short Trek's Q&A. And I thought that was a really awesome way to tie that little Short Trek back to Strange New Worlds. And I don't want to say make it canon. It was always canon. But, this Short Trek was done at a time that they were just trying to stretch things a little bit. And it kind of gave me hope back when these Short Treks first aired. They were pre-Strange New Worlds announcement. So I thought they were also maybe even going one step further to say, let's test the market to see if there truly is this appetite for more adventures of the USS Enterprise with Anson Mount and Rebecca Ramon and Ethan Peck. So yeah. I love the tie-in there, and I love the way Spock delivers the line, and then they show them kind of laughing and smirking.
I love that she had that response, especially from if you watch that particular Short Trek. She was explicitly like, never tell anybody ever, and she was very serious about it. But it came out in court, so
Well, he cannot lie. He's a Vulcan, as Pelia points out.
Well, it is revealed that 4 months passed between the events of Ghosts of Illyria and Equality of Mercy. And 2 months have passed since the events of Equality of Mercy. So it gives a little bit more context as far as the timing of this episode in canon.
Yeah. Very true. And then, of course, our last regeneration or trivia was going to be that the courtroom was a redress, but we kind of use that as a regeneration as well. So the courtroom was Discovery HQ. So final thoughts on this episode, Mark?
I think this is the last time I'm going to rewatch it for a little while. Because in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think I've seen it like 6 times. So I'm going to take a little break from this episode, but maybe in a year or so, I will look forward to jumping back in with it.
Yep. Totally understandable. I probably watch it more. I think this is going to be one of those, like, I need to feel the feels kind of episodes. So I'm just going to put it on because it reminds me I'm alive. I think anytime Star Trek brings me to tears, I am quickly, reminded that I still have empathy and I'm still a human being. And I think that's what I like about what Star Trek does for me in some ways. Mark, why don't you tell us what the homework is for next week?
Oh, Amy's got some homework for you guys. Next week, we are going to be discussing the Control series for part 3. And this is going to be the TOS episode, The Apple.
Since I will be here to do that next week, what season does that fall in? Do you know off the top of your head?
Amy actually added this one. I have no idea anything about this episode. I know I've seen it, but I do not remember, based on the title, what this episode is. Evidently, it has to do with some species being controlled by probably a computer or a foreign entity, because that's the whole part of the series.
It is season 2, episode 5.
Okay.
So it's not season 3. So there's some hope here. There's some hope.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissy and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissy and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Trexperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev? A Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark. And Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue the discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts to @GoodPod. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram @BQN Podcast. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching their master feed. So, Mark, where can people find you when your skin isn't glowing with its Illyrian goodness?
Well, it only does that when I'm getting, when I'm enjoying my evening. So people can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook group. They can now find me on Blue Sky Social at MW207. And yes, I'm still on Twitter at MarkWhite207. And you can also find me on my other podcast, Cinema Z, where with Matt and Laz, we discuss some really cool films. And Christos, where can people find you when you are not continuing to stand up for the rights of the underprivileged and disenfranchised?
Just call me Nira, girl. Yes, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and now Threads at GreekGeekSD. Not really sure how much longer I'm going to be keeping with the Twitters, so I'm planning for the full collapse of that, folks. You can also find me in the BQN Collective on Facebook, and you can find me over on my other little podcast called What's the Tea, Bev, where I interview members from the LGBTQ plus community and our allies about their Trekdom and talk current Star Trek events. I was able to get a few episodes out in May, June, and I'm hoping to record a few in over the next few weeks before STLV. So stay tuned for some new content.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. A special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music. And, well, I do the art.
Yes, you do. If you'd like to help us keep our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages. And by the way, listeners, 9 hours of sleep means you get to say that without messing up. I think it's the best time I've ever said that paragraph.
Woohoo! Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for listening, and we hope you will continue to join us as we
search out all good things.